what are some of your favorite bands? Because that's something a country I'm very unfamiliar with. I've been once, but it was just a
Oh,
layover. So what's the music scene like out there? What was it like growing up?
it was pretty amazing, like looking back. I mean, you take it for granted when you're a kid, but like, um, the population was a lot smaller then. Like, I think there were only 3 million people. So we're getting a lot of the Queen's background noise here. Um, but yeah, I mean, we grew up, like, we spent a lot of time on farms and at the beach and exploring. And like, my parents didn't let me watch TV or play video games, or which I didn't really have any interest in anyway. So I was mostly just like playing in the bush, building huts, or like riding horses or swimming. Or so it was, yeah, like really, definitely very privileged to have that kind of
It sounds like a
upbringing.
dream. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But
Did you
you're
start
like,
doing music? At what point did you get into music?
I started piano when I was 5. Actually, maybe a bit before that. Like, my aunt gave us a piano of hers, and so I would just kind of like mess around with it. And then my parents were like, "Hey, let's get you lessons." And um, so I did that for like 5 or 6 years, and then my school also had, like, they offered individual lessons. So again, I was like really fortunate. I was able to try out like saxophone and violin and I think even drums at one point. But yeah, I didn't pick up guitar till I was about 14, and that was when it stuck. And I was like, oh, I actually, I want to do something with this. I want to have a band, and
What made
yeah.
you kind of, I guess, go into guitar, switch into it from piano?
Um, I didn't really have a specific reason, and there was actually kind of a gap, like maybe a couple of years in between playing instruments. But I think just one day I was like, oh, I want to try this next, and but I always loved Brian May. Like, I grew up listening to Queen and Bowie and Pink Floyd and all that. So
Yeah, and
probably
who kind of got you into that?
my parents, that was what
Yeah,
they listened to.
hell yeah. What were your first sort of shows, or what were kind of like the first bands you were getting into at the time, when you first started, or what was your first band?
I mean, I was listening to black metal, I guess. Like, I remember going to one of my first guitar lessons, and I think I had like an Emperor CD and maybe Cradle of Filth or something, and I was just like, I want to play this. And he was like, let's try Into Sandman first. Like, we'll start there. um, but
That's
yeah,
great.
so I sort of went backwards into metal. Like, I was listening to all this like extreme stuff, like war metal, like Conqueror, Revenge, um, and then like also Morbid Angel. What else? Also, like, Today Is the Day. I really love them. But yeah, so I was listening to all this sort of, I guess, more extreme stuff, and then eventually came back and was like, oh, that's Metallica or Megadeth or Slayer. Like, going like step back into the thrash. And then yeah, and then later on, I sort of expanded my tastes a bit, and I remember going on like a big Stevie Ray Vaughan kick for a while, like trying to learn all his stuff and play that on guitar.
When did you start, I guess, playing out? What was your first like show? What was your first sort of performance like?
That was when I was about 18, and it was a cover band. Like, we just did metal songs. So we did like Sepultura, Slayer, Priest, Sabbath, and because I tried to put together original bands before that, and nothing had really worked. Things would just fizzle out. It's hard. Teenager, it doesn't always go well. um, but yeah, so eventually I was like, fuck it, I'll just grab some friends and we'll play covers and just have fun with it. And so we did like a few shows around the country, and um, yeah, and then
Around the whole country?
I mean, I think it was like 3 cities, maybe, like just the North Island.
Yeah, I guess it's
Uh,
not a very big place. How long
yeah.
does it take to drive across New Zealand?
I mean, Auckland to Wellington's about a 12-hour drive, or 10
Uh,
hours maybe, I think. And then South Island, that would take quite a bit longer. But
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Cool. What were those first shows like? What were you just like hooked? You're like, this is something I want to do. Were you always like, was that always like your mindset that you just want to be in a band and play shows out?
Yeah, pretty much since I started, that's just sort of been like the driving ambition.
Yeah. Were your parents always like, hell yeah, just gonna be a rock star? Was that the whole thing?
Not really. I
Well,
mean, that they were always supportive in what I wanted to do, but I don't think they were expecting me to do it for this long. And I remember being like 15, I'd only been playing for a year and putting flyers around town trying to start a band. And I was like, guitarist looking for band. And um, my mom was like, yeah, you probably shouldn't call yourself a guitarist. It's a bit misleading. And I was like, oh, thanks, mom. Supportive.
Why'd you say that?
I think because, I'd only been playing for a year. So she,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, gotcha. That's pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
I remember my
So,
first. I was at dinner with my mom, and she was like, "I was like, I want to learn drums." She's like, "You don't really seem like a drummer." I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, fuck me then, right? I guess never mind."
right. Just like brutally honest.
Yeah. And then she's like, "Oh, you're all right at this." Yeah, that's funny that you're had a similar experience to that.
Yeah.
Um,